All right, folks, it's a fresh week, and welcome in, folks, to the WNBA 365 Network, your 24/7, 365 comprehensive home for everything revolving around the WNBA and the rest of the women's basketball universe. Back with you folks tonight with another edition of the WNBA 365 Network's Playoff Central for Monday night, October the 3rd, 2016, and sadly, folks, the final week of shows that I will be in charge of up until I get back into my new place coming up sometime next month. With that, folks, alongside Crystal Thomas from Los Angeles and our good pal Marquez Anderson from StarsHoops.net, joining us from the Bayou State over at LSU. Cal McClurg for the final week inside of Studio 171 in San Diego. MA and Crystal, good to see you guys. How's it going tonight?
Hey, it's going well.
Yes, it's going well.
And, of course, folks, as always, Facebook, Twitter, live chat box open for you folks with open arms and open eyes over at facebook.com/WNBA365, or hit us up over on Twitter at WNBA365, at Calamac3, at Omarquez, or at Pup1010 with the hashtag WNBA365. Or if you are viewing us live tonight, folks, you can hit the live chat box located in the right corner of your screen and reply in with your questions, comments, or concerns, and we'll get to you when we have a break in the action this evening. With that, Marquez and Crystal, both Game 3s played yesterday on the menu of NFL Sunday coverage. And, of course, we have one series going past Game 3 and a series over in 3 games. Beginning, guys, with the Lynx over the Mercury from TSRA, 82-67. The Lynx with the victory now go on to their 5th WNBA Finals appearance in the past 6 seasons. And, again, are looking to tie the longtime great Houston Comets with their 4th WNBA championship. Marquez, you kind of knew that this series was over pretty much after Game 1 and how Phoenix had really had no answer at all in this series. They looked lackluster. They looked disinterested playing in Game 2 and 3. Somewhat, though, Marquez, for Phoenix, I think it's like a long time coming that they, of course, were knocked out after the very, very inconsistent season. Marquez, overall thoughts in your mind on the series between both the Lynx and Mercury, and again, the Lynx going to their 5th finals appearance in the past 6 seasons?
Yeah, it was pretty much inevitable at this point. I think this just puts into perspective the Mercury season. They struggled, and then they turned it on, and they'd struggle again, and then they turn it on, and then it worked for them to get out of the single eliminations. But once you get into series like that, especially against a team like Minnesota, you can't do that. You have to be strong coming out of the gate, and Phoenix just wasn't. And like I said, I just think it just characterizes their season as just a big roller coaster for them. And perhaps they'd look to change some things for next season, but it's just tough because, I mean, I think everyone was expecting them to do way better, and they just didn't perform.
Crystal, before we ask for your thoughts on this, please give a shout out or say hello to your buddy Eric Nimchok, who are in the chat box saying hi, Crystal.
Hi.
With that, Crystal, so again, Minnesota over PHX 82-67 from Talking Stevens Ford Arena last night. But again, Crystal, like I said about Phoenix, again, you could really tell, KT, at certain points of all 3 games that the Mercury, for one, either looked defeated, Crystal, or as I said, they looked disinterested. It looked like they did not want to be there playing these games. At least in the last half of Game 3 yesterday was where they really looked like they just hit a brick wall. You know, they looked and played defeated, I think, in all 3 games, maybe more so yesterday with it being, kind of dragged out towards the end. And, of course, as I said as well, KT, Lynx now their 5th finals appearance in the past 6 seasons. Utter, pure domination by this Minnesota team. Crystal, overall thoughts on the whole series in your mind? What do you think?
I mean, honestly, Phoenix was probably as they got. I honestly think New York should have done a little more to try to get there, but that is what it is, and we saw what happened. I mean, I don't think it's really expecting Phoenix to do much to Minnesota. I was at the game, but that was a fail. I'm not surprised. I mean, Phoenix had a season that they would like to forget. Next year, they're probably going to act like they never even played this season. They're probably going to, not think about it. And like Marquez says, I think there's reasons that will be. But overall, I'm not turned out.
Marquez, staying with the series again, folks, the Lynx win the series 3-0. Again, and pretty much, Marquez, all 3 games not even close by any close score margin between the Lynx and Mercury. And I think, as I've already brought up again, but Minnesota just really took the Merc to the woodshed and really, here the Mercury really had branded themselves as, this out for redemption tagline that they were going to go out and, sweep everybody or, win 30-plus games as tabbed by the GMs, of course, in the offseason. But again, Emma, you just never saw this team get high. They got low and were low all season with low points and, many failed expectations by a lot of people in their eyes. I guess, Marquez, your final thoughts on the Mercury season right now. What do you think?
Yeah, it was just – I don't want to call it a mess because, they did make playoffs and they made it farther than some people would have expected, but a majority of it was a mess. And you can point to a lot of things: coaches' rotations, lack of intensity on defense, turnovers, not rebounding, just looking disinterested altogether. And I think once you put all that together, it just really formed into something that wasn't really the best product for Phoenix this year.
Emma, we'll stay with you as we go into our next topic. Of course, last night, sadly, for a lot of people, myself included, probably some of us in here too, of course, the last game of the career of Australian great and Mercury great Penny Taylor. Of course, she announcing her retirement during the Olympic break this year that sort of has kind of added on to the ongoing retirement parties going on across the 2016 season. Marquez, behind DT, Penny Taylor is by far the number 2 favorite daughter of Phoenix Pro Sports behind Diana Taurasi, of course, which she's meant to the Mercury and the city of Phoenix for all these years, even, of course, beginning her career with the Cleveland Rockers back in the early 2000s, and also her kind of being number 2 as well behind Lauren Jackson with the Australian Opals and the national team. Marquez, what are your final thoughts, I guess, or a little bit of a time capsule, I guess, in your mind, about PT's career spanning from Cleveland to all those years in Phoenix and even with the Australian national team to her final game played yesterday? Overall final thoughts on her career or what?
Everybody loves Penny Taylor, and how could you not? She's tough, classy on and off the court, and she's just a really talented player, and that's something that Phoenix and the league as a whole is going to miss next year. I personally admire her story and how resilient she's been, overcoming a lot of things in her career, whether it be injuries or up and down seasons or whatever you have. I just think that she just epitomizes the pro athlete, and she will be missed.
So again, Crystal, Penny Taylor calls it quits after at least a 13 or 14-year amazing career, of course, from Cleveland to Phoenix to the Australian national team. And, Crystal, and I kind of think about Phoenix, of course, and they're sort of a little bit like San Diego in regards to not winning a championship at least since 2001 with the Arizona Diamondbacks of baseball winning on the main level. Of course, the Merc winning recently in 2014. But you think, though, Crystal, I think more about, great athletes in the Valley between my man Steve Nash, even Kevin Johnson with the Suns for many years in the late 90s, maybe even, of course, Paul Westphal and what he meant to the Suns in the 80s. Up until maybe you think as well of maybe Luis Gonzalez with the Diamondbacks, even Larry Fitzgerald now, of course, retiring from the Arizona Cardinals, and even on the hockey level, Shane Doan, who's in his 21st season or something like that with the Arizona Coyotes this year coming up. Crystal, overall thoughts, I guess, on how much Penny Taylor, in your mind, probably means the Phoenix Mercury basketball and maybe even basketball in Phoenix in your mind for right now before we get your final thoughts on her whole career. But what does she mean, though, I guess, in mind to the Mercury organization as a whole?
I think she meant a lot to the Mercury organization. She was half of the reason why Phoenix won those championships. Her, DT, Cappy, I could go on for a lot of people that was on that roster, but she meant a lot. If it wasn't for her, essentially, I don't think Phoenix would be where they were. And even this year, I think she's half the reason why they were even to get that 8th spot. We saw, well, they actually did pretty well without her last year, but I do think if it wasn't for her, you wouldn't really think of the Mercury the way they are. Diana Taurasi's there, but I think Penny Taylor is a big reason for that too. And, like Marquez said, and she's going to be missed. She was tough. I don't think people realize how tough she was as a player. She would take shots and just keep getting up from him and would keep coming at you like you didn't just hit her. So it's going to be weird to see the league without a lot of the people that have retired this year. But father time, or in this case, mother time, is undefeated, and people have to move on.
We're now, folks, grateful to be joined in the Hangout by Tanisha Stewart, Shorty Mamba 24. Joining us, of course, up from Los Angeles. Shorty, good to see you tonight. How's it going?
Hey, everything's going good so far.
Shorty, of course, we're in the middle of talking about Penny Taylor, but first we're going to revert back and go back to the first topic on our discussion. Of course, the Merc and Lynx series wrapping up yesterday. Minnesota clobbering the Mercury one final time, landing the knockout blow, 82-67 to wrap up their series in 3 games. Shorty, we had just talked about the Mercury more so than the Lynx here. Of course, the Lynx are going to their 5th finals appearance in 6 seasons. But more so, Shorty, about, all the hype, all the, the surveys, and the Mercury having this player back and that player back. Well, they really fell flat on their face this year with this Alpha Redemption branding and tagline this year, sadly. But, Shorty, you could just see it kind of building, though, after Game 1, how Phoenix looked lackluster. They looked disinterested. They looked defeated playing Games 2 and 3, even, of course, in their own building, which it's tough, of course, to beat Phoenix when they're on their game at TSRA, but when they're off their rocker like they were last night, Shorty, they're very, very vulnerable, and that was the case. And Minnesota really took them to the woodshed in all 3 games. Shorty, overall final thoughts on the first series to end, and again, the Lynx go to the finals for the 5th time in 6 years, awaiting either LA or Chicago.
Yeah, when it comes to Game 3, I mean, even though it was close in the first half, still they looked defeated, and that's definitely the key word here. Like, they were at home, so I'm pretty sure most people thought that, they were going to come out, guns a-blazing, ready to, extend the series, but that really wasn't the case. And you can just look at body movement. They just shrugged when Minnesota, made a great defensive play or whatnot, because they kept, just pretty much deferring the ball, Minnesota pretty much when they tried to go inside. It's just, again, that paint presence of Sil, pretty much, cut things off for them. So the players were shrugging the arms, the shoulders, and things like that. And they looked defeated, especially going into the second half. And that's where the blowout continued. And even though I would say Minnesota did not exactly play the way I thought they would have, it was Natasha Howard that came off the bench, 17 points overall. She was the one who actually led the way for Minnesota. But for Phoenix, I mean, again, they just looked defeated. Even though this was a better game coming out of Brittany Griner, it still wasn't enough. When you only have 2 players in double figures, DT and Dewana Bonner with 12 points each, I mean, you can't do that against Minnesota. It wasn't enough, and that was the end of their series.
Shorty, we'll play a 2-man game real quick before we take a brief break and move on to other things. Of course, Shorty, as well, the final game played as well in the illustrious career of Penny Taylor yesterday, too, with the series ending for Phoenix in their season ending. Again, Shorty, I just kind of name-dropped a few famous Phoenix sports team athletes, of course, that have left their print on the greater Phoenix area in the Valley of the Sun. Of course, Steve Nash, Kevin Johnson, Luis Gonzalez, Larry Fitzgerald, Shane Doan, notably the few names I brought up. Shorty, I guess your overall final thoughts and final takeaway from Penny Taylor and her very great career, of course, from Cleveland to Phoenix, some hardship, 3 titles later. Shorty, overall thoughts on how much PT means to the WNBA and also the Australian women's national team.
If I can recall, I think she was, originally drafted by the Cleveland Rockers and then was awarded to Phoenix in the dispersal draft. And they definitely got a gem when that happened, because she became the essential X factor for Phoenix. I mean, I'm pretty sure the panel has already stated that, even though DT's the star, in my case, or at least what I have said prior, Penny is the engine that makes Phoenix go. I mean, she just steps up for Phoenix, especially on the defensive end, where in an area that DT can be a liability. Penny has always, stood up, as the defensive X factor for them, making the tough plays, making the tough defensive plays, whether, it's stopping the other teams, defensive player or taking charges or whatever the case may be. She was always there. And yeah, she was a big part of, their 3 titles, and also a big part, overseas with the Opals, as well. So she just had, a long, luxurious career of winning in both, domestic and abroad for her, winning in Australia, then also in the U.S. and the WNBA. And she means a lot, to a lot of WNBA fans, and she will definitely be missed. Not only with Penny, but just the WNBA as a whole. So many people retiring, but she was definitely, sadly, one of the names, and she will be missed by everyone.
Should put on 2 real quick. This is directed to Eric Nimchok. I'm keeping our band T-shirt streak alive, Eric. I've worn a band shirt since you haven't been on since at least Friday night. So we've had at least 3 shows where I've had band shirts on to kind of keep it afloat for us. A couple comments, guys, from Christy Wilson, who says, in regards to the Mercury season, she writes in simply saying, very disappointing. And she also said that PT had a great career. Hopefully we'll see her in the Hall of Fame sometime soon. You can score free shipping on all U.S. orders over $25 from the WNBA store. You can use the promo code WNBA25 at checkout over on WNBAstore.com. One store, every team, over on WNBAstore.com. So with that, Shorty, now as we do move on now to more of a general discussion about Phoenix. Now, again, we'll have more about all the teams' seasons after the season's over, of course, guys. But Shorty, to kind of, I guess, give us the Cliff Notes version, what are your thoughts about Phoenix's blueprint, trying to bounce back from a very, very disappointing 2016 season and looking forward to bigger and brighter days in 2017? What do you think is their early off-season agenda right now, and why?
That's an interesting one, because I've heard, so many things. So many people have brought up, coaching change, and as far as roster-wise, I'm not sure what they're going to do. I know a flub there, but I'm not sure what they're going to do. What is going to be their next move to replace Taylor, bring in possibly some young blood there. We don't know how long DT has left in the tank herself. She
Now we were going strong until Shorty hit some minor technical faults, so we'll move on to Marquez. So again, Marquez, what do you think is Phoenix's early off-season agenda right now, and why?
I think they can start in a lot of various areas. For one, a point guard maybe. I'm not sure where or who they could target, but that should be something that should be a priority for them, perhaps. They also have to make some decisions in terms of free agency. I know Griner is an RFA. I'm not sure if she's re-signed or not. And then you have Kelsey Bone, who also is a restricted free agent. They have to make a decision on Misty Bass. It's just a lot that they can do in terms of who to send or who to get rid of. Then you also have to think about Candace Dupree's future with the team. It's just a lot. I mean, it's really hard to pinpoint an exact area because there's so many different ways this can go. But it really just depends. Maybe they go with one of the bigger named free agents that's supposed to be coming out this year. So wherever they decide to go, I just think it could be something that is in the step in the right direction for them.
So again, Crystal, Phoenix marred by, just up and down play, inconsistency, and 0-3, 0-4, 0-5 start. Losses out of the gate, of course, don't help. Getting in the back door, getting through rounds 1 and 2, but ultimately falling when it counts the most in a 5-game series. Crystal, what do you think is probably the Mercury's early offseason agenda, and why?
I agree. Excuse me. I agree with Marquez. I mean, they're going to have to figure out what they want to do with those free agents. If I was Phoenix, in all honesty, I probably wouldn't keep Misty Bass. I would probably think about if I wanted to keep Bone or not, and the other ones are solely up to them. I'm not a GM. I'm just saying that those would be my thoughts. But and then they have to feel like they have to figure out what they're gonna do with that guard position since Lizzie Harding, announced her retirement. They're gonna have to figure out who they're gonna get to play guard, who they want if they want to keep certain free agents, and pretty much what goes on from there. A lot of people think that Brondello won't be back next year. I, for one, think she will. I think Brondello stays. I do think she's going to be watched a little bit closer. But, this whole season wasn't there was some questionable rotations, but this season in general was it was a log jam for Phoenix. I don't think Phoenix really knew what they wanted their identity to be. I don't think they really knew what they wanted to do. I think they were still harboring over that loss against Minnesota, and I mean, and you can't blame them. I mean, the way they lost was just they got cheated pretty much. But I just think they have to just figure out everything that they're going to do, and as far as it starts with draft day first, and I think once they figure out what they do in draft day, then everything else will come a little easier.
And to piggyback off that, the draft you mentioned, I forgot to mention that there are point guards in this draft, but I'm not quite sure if Phoenix would go that route, though. I know Sydney Weiss is from Phoenix up at Oregon State, but I don't really think that she will be a point guard per se at this level. I see her having to transition, and then once you think about it, I'm not sure if Kelsey Plum would be there at 5. It's just really hard because, I mean, like you said, they need to find a way to fill those holes, but I can't really think of anyone off the top of my head that's really realistic for them at this point.
One quick comment, piggybacking off of what Crystal said about Sandy Brondello and her job security. Christy Wilson says if she does come back, she believes Brondello is going to be on the hot seat next season, and there's going to be probably no margin for error for Phoenix next season if, in fact, Sandy is back next year. The other game, guys, we have one series extending past 3 games. The Sky stayed alive, beating Los Angeles last night from Allstate Arena 70-66 to force a Game 4 on Tuesday night from Allstate. Shorty, LA, of course, maybe becoming may become the new international sign for choking, perhaps, or international symbol for choking pretty soon. After that pretty bad affair last night, obviously building a pretty big lead, but of course, ultimately falling off towards the end. Some players not really, perhaps some coaching miscommunication here in regards to certain players staying in the game. Shorty, overall thoughts on what derailed LA's train in a potential early visit with Minnesota, instead though having to go to Game 4. So what went wrong for Los Angeles in your mind in the loss on Sunday?
Battling, I wouldn't say choking unless lose the series. I would be choking, but overall, I just was Chicago stifling defense. I mean, just they denied everything. Dos Santos was a big reason for that. She, came up big in the third, and Los Angeles only scored about, LA only scored about 8 points, 8 points in that third quarter, that was definitely terrible. And then the fourth quarter, Amani came up big, ending a rebound. I mean, exactly. It was to attack Nneka after she picked up those fourth in the zone. You don't just take random shots. You move the ball, find the seams within those zones to ultimately there's open. So once LA figures out the next game how to, they'll do better.
So again, Marquez, Chicago staves off elimination for at least one more night. Again, 70-66 over Los Angeles. Again, we're pretty much what we got from Shorty. And again, folks, we're trying to work out Shorty's technical problems. But again, we haven't had much luck the past couple of days. We'll get those resolved hopefully soon. But again, Marquez once more. Shorty brought up, though, about Imani Boyette stepping up. And normally rookies don't step up sometimes in big situations, but she did do so last night. But again, though, it was either LA and Brian Nagler keeping certain players in the game too long, not taking them out, or even as well as Shorty Bob, though, too. LA's poor shot selection as well that also doomed them. And also how Courtney Vandersloot, of course, hit pretty much a dagger bucket at the end to win the game for Chicago to keep them alive for one more night. But again, MA, what do you think that went wrong for Los Angeles in this game that sees Chicago at least stay alive for one more matchup?
Well, in order to be the zone busters, you have to hit your shots, and that's just something LA didn't do, whether it was because of forced ones or just ones that just weren't falling. I mean, Chicago went into that zone, and LA just really wasn't able to get them to get out of it because they shot 18% from 3. I mean, their best three-point shooter went 3 for 12, and then other people tried to come in at key points and make some shots, but it just didn't go their way. And then Chicago, they didn't play particularly too well either until the second half. So, I mean, for LA. It's not something they should really panic about because I mean they do have the lead and they still have the I think they have more talent. It's just they can't come out lazy. I feel like they have to come out more aggressively and they can't take their foot off the pedal. And I feel like that's something they did.
Mm-hmm.
So again, Crystal, everyone here gave Chicago at least one game. So we'll just say that right now that we did pick the series to go 3-1 in favor of Los Angeles at this point. And again, Crystal, maybe a little bit of some minor lackluster, maybe a little bit as Marquez said, letting the foot off the gas pedal yesterday for the Sparks. Chicago got hot, the Sparks went cold, and Chicago changed their defensive scheme and rotation. It worked to perfection last night. Crystal, overall thoughts, though, on Game 3 between the Sky and Sparks that against Seas and Chicago. Stay alive for at least one more game in the series.
Well, first, like Marquez said, there's no need to panic. I think LA still wins the series. Overall, they're the better team. For some reason, Chicago and LA don't match up well. Just yesterday, Chicago did get LA's number. They did well with taking Neck out early when she had 5 fouls and really couldn't do much. Couldn't really get physical like she wanted to. And as far as Brian leaving people in a little too late, we all know that Ana Dabovic is not a point guard. We all know that she has a tendency to slow the game down when she plays PG. She's a better shooting guard than a play. I kind of noticed when she came in the game, a lot of plays weren't being run. A lot of things weren't really getting done properly, and it kind of just it slowed a lot of stuff down. And like Marquez said, in order to have a zone busted, you need to hit your shots. And there was a lot of poorly executed, poorly forced shots out there. And I'm not gonna say any names in particular because if you guys are watching the game, you know who I'm talking about. But overall, the team yesterday, I mean, they just let up, and Chicago played a good game. I mean, Chicago figured it out. Courtney Vandersloot had a really good game. Courtney Vandersloot took advantage at the end, too. I'm not mad at her. If I know Nneka has 5 fouls, it's not going to foul me. I'm probably going to shoot that shot, too. It was a good shot. It went in. But like I said, I mean, LA is definitely going to win the series overall. But it was a good game with Chicago, and you can't really go with the win. I mean, they figured it out. They were able to stop LA.
So all of us got it right, and sadly, to our buddy Eric Nimchok, he probably put his foot in his mouth after Chicago won the game because he said it was going to be a 3-0 LA sweep. But in the end, the Sky win. More importantly, the forced Game 4 over the Sparks, 70-66. Next game, guys, for the semifinal round will be on Tuesday. The Sparks at Chicago, with LA leading the series 2-1. That game will tip off at 5:00 p.m. on ESPN2. Shortly, does anything change here, or does the series end tomorrow? What do you think and why? Who wins?
LA.
One vote for Los Angeles. Marquez, what do you think?
San Antonio.
That option is not applicable. LA or Chicago.
LA.
2 votes for LA to win the series 3-1. Crystal, you sticking by your 3-1 pick, or what do you think?
Yeah, LA wins. I think some things will be changed. I think LA will figure it out. I think they're going to throw those purple uniforms away. I don't really blame that loss of the purple uniforms, though. They were winning. I think just a lot of those mistakes at the end kind of let Chicago get back into it. But LA's winning the series.
By the way, we had a question posed by Kennedy Robinson asking about EDD and her status. As of right now, unknown, but probably Deladon still going to be out probably with that injured thumb. Probably not going to be back at all anytime this season. So we can hang our hat on that at least for right now. That EDD probably will be out for the remainder of the year due to that injured thumb. No word, but she has been listed as doubtful for all 3 games or through all 3 games so far. So probably will remain doubtful for Game 4 as well. A update as well, guys, depending on how the series goes. Game 1 of the WNBA Finals is scheduled for this upcoming Sunday, October 9th. Game 1 in Minneapolis between either LA or Chicago versus the Lynx at high noon Pacific time on ABC. 1, 2, 3 on ABC. For Game 1 of the WNBA Finals. Again, 12:00 noon. Tip-off Pacific time, again, ABC, Sparks or Sky at Minnesota for Game number 1. WNBA Fantasy has arrived, and it is here to stay. You can play throughout the postseason by downloading the brand-new W Player Pick app from your app store. You can play the games, rack up points, and win the night, only available to U.S. fans only. on your mobile devices. And Shorty, I had just told this to Crystal before we came on air. I actually downloaded the app onto my iPad. Now, again, folks, this is somewhat of a dry run, I'd probably say, for some type of WNBA fantasy for next season. This app is run through both the WNBA and a upcoming fantasy sports app called Squad. So, again, it's more so for your phone, but if you download it, you'll be able to play the game tomorrow. Now, again, my screen, of course, doesn't really help out the cause. Let me try dimming it a little bit, but you'll be able to download the app from the App Store, from either the Play or the App Store, and you can select which game you want to play. So, of course, it'll be for tomorrow, so you can play the game while you pick one player from either team of who you think's going to have a big night. Now, the thing here is you'll be able to pick a player from either team, but during the course of the game, if you feel like they're not performing well, you can trade or make a different selection throughout the course of the game. So just kind of give you a bit of a quick tutorial here. You can find more about this as well. So here's how it works. You tune into a game, of course, open up the app, you click play, and then you select your first player, basically. So it's kind of like it's like a mixture of a draft and then whatnot. So you choose the player that you'll think will do the best throughout the course of the game. And then whenever the player scores, you get points, either points, rebounds, or assists. And at any point in the game, you can change the player you want to use for the game at any point. You rack up points so you can win great rewards and prizes as well, which includes everything from wristbands to WNBA store.com gift cards to team basketballs, even to WNBA jerseys, depending on how well you do for the night. So, Shorty, obviously, the WNBA, of course, is trying to kind of, I guess, get into the fantasy sports world, of course, with either what we've seen, of course, with other either one-day sport fantasy leagues or what have you. So, Short, again, this is probably more of a dry run, perhaps, for next year maybe. So what's your overall thoughts on this brand new app being launched by the league and by Squad for the remainder of the playoffs and maybe, Shorty, launching for the entire 2017 season?
I think it's a good idea, and I'm pretty sure, as you stated, it's a test run right now. So you're trying to see how things will fill out and how, fans will interact with it and how they will receive it. But overall, I think it's a good idea, and fans have been asking for a fantasy league from the WNBA for years now, and it hadn't happened until now. So I think it's a good idea.
Now, Marquez, a quick thing to keep in mind, again, this is not like a typical ESPN or NBA.com run fantasy basketball league. It's more along the lines, I'd say, of DraftKings or even FanDuel, where you play the full night with, you play the full 1 to 6 game schedule, and then you can just choose players from game to game. But again, Marquez, it is, though, I think, a good stepping stone for the WNBA to get involved with fantasy sports. I mean, as we already know, with the Liberty being sponsored by DraftKings, which is sort of along the lines of this somewhat of a one-day fantasy league, or in this case, it's a one-day player-run thing. But again, Marquez, I think this is a good tutorial or dry run to try and promote or even get a fantasy league up and running for the WNBA as early as next year. So again, MA, overall thoughts on the WNBA trying out fantasy sports for at least the remainder of the 2016 postseason and perhaps all of next year?
Yeah, it's a fun idea. I like the concept. Like you said, it's probably just a trial run to see how people interact and see how it goes, and things to fix and things to keep for next season if it continues. And it's just due time. I think it'll be a really fun idea, and it's a way to get fans involved.
Now, Crystal, you were sort of a little bit like Debbie Downer a little bit when I told you about this off air again, just because I mean I know that we all in here are used to ordinary, you fill out a team in a draft and you play somebody else like we're going to in fantasy hoops issue once the NBA season starts in a couple weeks. But again, Crystal, at least though the WNBA is trying to kind of get into the fantasy sports world. Now, again, it's not along the lines of traditional sports where it's fill out a whole team and you're locked in for the whole season. You can play day to day, kind of like, as I said, FanDuel, DraftKings, but of course you're playing for wristbands or for jerseys or whatnot. So there are some pretty good caveats or prizes or incentives involved if you do play. But I guess, Crystal, overall thoughts from your side of the story, I guess, on somewhat of the negative, I guess, behind the WNBA launching this app so late in the year.
I wouldn't say Debbie Downer because I wasn't like,
Sure sounded like it.
I wasn't like, this is stupid. I was just saying, I don't know why you would launch it right now is what I was saying. The season's pretty much basically almost over. I don't think that's something that you should probably launch during the playoffs/finals. I think if you're going to launch something like that, you should launch it in the beginning of the season to let people get acclimated with it first. Don't launch it when the season is only like probably, depending on how the games go, 2 to 3 weeks left. I feel like that's not giving enough time to get used to the app. But I mean, I'm not really Debbie Downer about it. I think it might work. I think it probably will be. I think it'll be fun. I just wish they probably would have did this app a little bit earlier instead of during the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
And Christy Wilson agrees with all of us. She says it's about time the WNBA gets involved in the fantasy sports thing because, you know, I know that we had talked about this a little bit, guys, when DraftKings and FanDuel were up. Of course, they've had some problems in the court of law, of course, and we had kind of talked about, you know, maybe the Liberty will break away from DraftKings and their sponsorship, but of course they have not. But again, Shorty, going back to you on this again, you know, at least though that the WNBA is, you know, again, kind of giving us like a dry run. You know, this is, you know, even though the Crystal said there's like maybe 2 or 3 weeks left, this is their chance to kind of see where this stands. Again, the leaderboard I saw looks a little bit inflated, but of course, with people have probably changed players, of course. But again, Shorty, do you probably though expect to see this kind of, I guess, in regards to how this little dry run goes? Do you probably expect to see this fantasy thing though off and running though for maybe for next season in your mind? What do you think?
Most definitely. I do think, you know, it'll definitely take off by next season. Everyone, you know, like to participate because, you know, as I said before, you know, they've been waiting for this kind of fantasy league from the WNBA for years. And you had so many fans themselves creating their own fantasy leagues during the season because, you know, Crystal, we created one ourselves because we've been, you know, wanting to play, you know, a WNBA version of a fantasy league, and it hadn't happened yet until now. So it'll definitely take off by next season.
So again, Marquez, the WNBA is going to get at least 1, maybe 2 more Spark Sky games, and at least 3, 4, maybe 5 finals games. So again, they're going to get at least at most 7 games to kind of see where this app stands, what the fans think about it. And again, Marquez, like Shorty said, I mean, people have gone as far as creating their own fantasy leagues for the WNBA. Of course, Shorty and Crystal did theirs with a bunch of friends. It was called Pet Wars is what they called it, believe it or not. But I guess, Marquez, do you believe, though, that this app will probably be around to stay maybe for 2017, depending on how well it does perform, though, during the remainder of the postseason?
Oh yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, like I said, it's a way to get people involved and more interested. But I agree with Crystal. This could have been launched a little bit earlier, considering how late it is into the season. Maybe this could have been implemented after the Olympic break, so we would have had the regular season and the start of the playoffs to get acclimated. But I mean, it's baby steps.
And also, Christy replies back about her previous comment. She also says that fantasy leagues in the NFL and the NBA are huge, not to mention as well fantasy hockey leagues and even fantasy baseball leagues also as well. So again, Crystal, so the WNBA maybe probably flopped on their face like they have in plenty of other times, either with TV issues or what have you about this. But again, they're going to at least get 7 games to really, I guess, kind of see where they stand. Now, it looks like, guys, from the leaderboard that this app has been available for a good part, if not the whole season, because, again, it was launched and started by a company called Squad, which also launched a WNBA fantasy league, and now the WNBA sort of, I guess, kind of overtook it. But it looks like, judging by the numbers on the leaderboard, that this has been around for a while, not just recently. So I guess, Crystal, now they're going to at least get 7 games to really judge and really see where they stand. Crystal, do you expect to see this app probably back again next year, but probably for the entire year, beginning as early as next season?
It got kind of choppy. You said, do I think it will be back or do I think it should be back?
Do you think it will be back next season?
Hopefully, yeah, and hopefully they let people know about it so that we can get on it earlier and start to see what it's about. I hope it would be because I already know I'm gonna pick the greatest players ever. You know, I'm gonna roll with the the Abdis of the world. That's what I'm gonna pick on my fantasy team. But I hope they do. Bring it back. I mean, it seems like it could be a fun idea if you're playing with your friends. You could be like, oh, I'm gonna pick this player. She's gonna beat you guys or whatever the case may be. So it seems like it'd be a good game to play with friends and people who are into the league. So I would hope to see it back.
So again, folks, WNBA Fantasy is here, and it could be here to stay. Again, you can play throughout the remainder of the 2016 playoffs by downloading the W Player Pick app from your app store, either on Google or through the Apple App Store. You can play the games, rack up points, and win the night. Only available, though, folks, to U.S. fans as of right now, as they are working on extending this out to probably our friends across the globe sometime soon. But again, you play and you can win prizes, including wristbands, team basketballs, and even WNBA jerseys, too, as well, with the new app. Again, download it for free from your App Store or Google Play as well. With that, guys, we will call it a night right here. We have a few of us that are either tired from school or have some important homework to do, perhaps. With that, though, folks, we'll call it a night here. And be back with you folks tomorrow night to recap Game 4 of the 2016 semis between the Sparks and Sky. Up until then, folks, for KT and Shorty in Los Angeles and for Marquez Anderson from the Bayou State of Louisiana, Calvin Clerk signing off from Studio 171 in San Diego. Folks, take care and good night. See you mañana. Bye-bye.